Story 1. 3. 9K. R. Malicious Compliance. Posted by You, the real Dr. Jan Itor. 13 hours ago. You want the plastic surgeon? If you insist. Sock. For context, this takes place at a large academic center in Canada, where it is very common to have residents performing basic procedures. I once got a call as a senior resident from an emergency physician apologizing for consulting us for an irate woman with a small laceration on her hand, insisting that a plastic surgeon come to fix her right now. Of course, this was well within his scope of practice, but despite telling the patient this, she refused to allow just an emerged doc to fix wound. He explains the situation, and I decide that this would be an excellent opportunity for malicious compliance as well as teaching my junior resident. So I tell him not to worry. He'll be down when we finish in the OR in a few hours. So I go down to see the patient with my junior, who just happens to be an off-service emerge resident. I examine the patient and explain to the now impatient woman that Dr. Junior resident would be fixing her hand. Keep in mind, by this point she has been waiting a few hours longer than she would have if she had let the emerge doc fix her. So ironically, instead of having her hand fixed by an emergency physician who has likely done thousands of these, she has it done by a junior emerge resident who has done like 2 or 3. And of course, I was there the entire time to ensure the resident did a satisfactory job. So it was more work for myself in the end. But I did enjoy the irony of the situation. 251 comments. Award. Share. Save. 167 people here. If you're enjoying this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Story 2. $2. 5K. R. Malicious Compliance. Posted by You, Renticle. 12 hours ago. Pay for 20 hours of work. Get 20 hours of work. XLOC. This happened last year and I've been waiting months to share the inevitable fallout. So please enjoy this lengthy tale of corporate stupidity. I'll begin by saying I work for a software company. I was working on a project for a client to customize part of the software and stuff. The project was very open-ended, mostly because the client kept changing their mind about what they wanted. So the contract was time and materials, meaning that I had an hourly rate. I would log all the time worked on the project, in half-hour intervals. And every week my company would bill the client company for the hours spent on the project. The client said they didn't care how much effort it took. They wanted a good product and they wanted it before the end of the year, so they could present it at their big internal meeting. At the beginning, the project went great. Every week I had a meeting with the client and I would get feedback on the progress, as well as new requests they might have. And then I'd spend however long it took to implement the changes. I'd bill them 15 hours. 20 hours, 25 hours, or however many it had been. Slowly, over time, the client started requesting more and more. I told them during the meeting this feature will require X days of work. Changing that will require Y more days, and so on. But again the client insisted they needed all those extra features. They also complained that the project wasn't advancing quickly enough, and insisted they needed the project completed before the end of the year. I talked to my manager and explained the situation. To be able to finish quickly enough, I needed to work full-time on this project. My manager moved my other projects to different people, and we told the client that until the end of the year I would work full-time on the project to ensure we will hit all the deadlines. The client was overjoyed. For about a month. The following month, the client is pissed and is demanding to know why we're charging him so much. I pull out my timesheets and explain that, as agreed, I've been working full-time, and more, on their project. Every week I've logged between 45 and 50 hours of work. And I have detailed notes specifying exactly how I've spent that time. I'm not particularly concerned about being accused of stealing time, because I'm a fast worker and most tasks have been completed more quickly than the original estimates. Besides, I point out that I'm now working twice as many hours as before. So it's costing the client twice as much per week. But I'm also completing tasks twice as quickly and will be finished in half the time. The client, unfortunately, doesn't appreciate my use of logical reasoning. They accuse my company of taking advantage, and they say that starting from next week they no longer want to pay for more than 20 hours of work per week. I tell them, sure, we can do that. But it's October already and you want the project completed by the end of the year. Given the amount of work still left to do, I will need more hours to finish. The client doesn't let me explain and says that we're not to bill them for anything more than 20 hours per week. They will not pay us for more than 20 hours per week. And they want this in writing or they'll cancel the entire project. And my manager says, of course. The customer is always right. This was an evil act of malicious compliance. So please read until the end before getting angry at my manager. H is a great guy. Closing parenthesis. So my manager sends the client an email confirming that, starting from date, my engagement with them will be capped at a maximum of 20 hours per week. He also attaches a spreadsheet of the estimated time to develop all the new features of the project, how many hours I'd spent so far, and how many hours I projected to spend to complete it. The client smugly acknowledges this. Before the end of the week, my manager gives me back my other project, as well as a new one. You see, at the time we were understaffed because we were growing too quickly. And we were getting more requests for new projects that we could handle. So there would have been no point in stealing hours from this client and pissing him off, when we can take on a couple of new clients instead and bill everyone for the actual work and keep everyone happy. We have yet another meeting with the client and my manager. My manager asks me why I'm missing this huge deadline. I say, do you remember when I was talking about all the work that still needed to be done and how long it would take? In October, we estimated the project needed another 60 days of work. I worked 10 days in October and 10 days in November. Because you said 20 hours max per week, it's going to take about 40 more days of work to finish the project. It's December. Even if I work overtime, there are not 40 days left before the end of the year. Manager is like, yep. Makes perfect sense. Client does the shocked Pikachu face. They act like this is the first they've heard about not being able to meet the deadlines, even though I've been telling them for weeks. Unfortunately, they are the kind of person who never listens to what they don't want to hear. At first, they wanted the work done quickly, so they didn't think that if I worked more hours I would bill them for more hours. Then they wanted to be billed for fewer hours, so they didn't consider that I would work fewer hours on the project and things would get done much more slowly. Unfortunately for the client, who would like to pretend that we were springing this on them at the last minute, we had tons of emails to show we had told them well in advance. My manager's email back in October had even included an estimate of when the project would be completed based on number of hours worked per week. Our ass was well and truly covered. Now, as for the fallback, the client kicked and screamed and demanded that I go back to work on their project full time, or even that my company should provide a second person to help me meet the deadline at the end of the year. It's January and the project is still unfinished, so you can guess how well that went. Client had to move the big presentation of the new software and was not happy about it, and about having to explain it all to their own CEO. But we told them very nicely in corporate tones to pound sand. I was already scheduled to work on 2 other projects for the next few months, and it had been hard enough to put me full-time on this project the first time. My manager is not going to leave another 2 clients hanging. Especially not to please this pissy client who keeps changing their mind and threatens to cancel their contract every other week. As a company, we do our best to keep the client happy, but there is a limit to everything. Especially when someone goes out of their way to not listen when we try to explain how cause and effect works. TLDR. Client demands I work more slowly. I work more slowly. The work is not completed by the time client needed it. And client is upset. But I don't care because I get paid anyway. 96 comments. Award. Share. Save. 345 people here. If you're enjoying this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Story 3. $8. 5K. R. Malicious Compliance. Posted by Jorgal. 1 day ago. The principal of the school asked everyone to be 30 minutes early for the exam. 30 or so hours of overtime were paid. And she had to monitor students herself. Lock. I'm not a native English speaker. I apologize if I make mistakes. I'm a teacher. The principal we had at our school was the kind who got to this position because it was a way to escape teaching students. She was a teacher before taking the exam to be principal. Which is common, and to flaunt the little authority it got her. One of the issues I had with her was about punctuality. She was especially a hard ass about it. Which would have been fine if she weren't herself systematically late to everything. I loathe hypocrites. And it makes our job especially difficult to ask students to be on time at classes when the principal was half an hour late at a meeting she scheduled herself with their parents. Come the end of year and with it, time for the baccalaureate, final exam of high school. The students start to receive their convocations for the exam week. When we see their convocations, we're already pissed because the time is wrong, on purpose. It would tell a student they have to be there at 7:30 for a 4H test, without even telling him the test is actually scheduled to start at 8:00 and ends at 12:00. A few days later, the teachers received their own convocations to monitor the tests. It's usual to get them after the students. Though it was particularly late this year. For us, the scheduled time of the test is correct. But it was mentioned on each of our convocations that we had to be present 30 minutes before the start of each test. I mean, we aren't going to be present at 8:00 exactly if the test is scheduled to start at that time. We don't want to screw the students over. We need a few minutes to get the test papers and let the students in the classroom so that we can start exactly on time. But 5 minutes is enough. 10 at most. And as teachers, we are used to being there slightly before class starts anyway. Most of us simply ignored her and came to the exam on time as usual. But a dozen of us decided to comply, and we sent her emails tallying up the total number of hours we'd be working that week, adding that half hour before each test. She answered some bullshit that our tallies were wrong because she wasn't counting the half hour. We let that pass. We complied and my colleagues declared their overtime. In the end, that came to about 30 hours of overtime total for doing jack shit that had to be paid. She also did not seem to realize that my email was slightly different than that of my colleagues. Me. That's a bit different. Because I work part-time. As such, I'm not allowed to do overtime. The reason for that is because both part-time and overtime are paid more than regular hours. So it has to be either or. Comes Friday. I sent a new email, reminding her about the upcoming issue. No answers. The last 4-hour test of the week starts at 13:00. At 14:25, I asked my colleague monitoring the next room over, who was in on the plan, to cover for me for 5 minutes. There's a door between the exam rooms. We can stand there and watch both rooms to let the other take a bathroom break or something like that. I go to the principal's office. I remind her that there is a room full of students with 2h30 left and I don't know if Shush has scheduled someone to take over for me. But I've already done all my hours for this week, and since I'm not allowed to do overtime, I'm leaving. Now, as a teacher, I take pride in my punctuality and my ability to finish my speech exactly on time. I also purposefully timed this one. Just after I told her I was leaving, I look at my watch. It's 3 seconds to 14:30. I look at her face while she gathers her thoughts. In 3 seconds, she went from confusion to realization to anger, and just as Shush is about to answer, "It's time," so I turn around and walk away. I leave while I hear her half-coherent threats. She followed me, of course, but couldn't really talk loudly in the corridors while the exam was taking place. Plus, she still knows that loudly berating a teacher in public in full view and hearing of students would be extremely unprofessional. And Shush is the one who'd get in trouble for that. More importantly, I know where I'm going. I pass in front of the classroom I was monitoring in earlier. I thank my colleague, points at the principal who's just catching up, red as a beet, and tell him, "I brought you the principal." I leave as he greets her, thus intercepting her for me. I learned that she had to monitor the students herself, which must have pissed her off something fierce because she leaves early on Fridays. Next week, obviously, she requested that we had a talk in her office. I went with my union representative. We explained to her that it was not difficult to prove that she was the one in the wrong and that if she wanted to escalate the issue, we would have no problem getting it to the administrative tribunal. My union representative also made the open threat of a strike. That I and those who declared their overtime had the support of the union and teaching staff. TLDR. Principal asked all teachers, in writing, to be there 30 minutes early for exams. Most ignored it. Some did and declared it as overtime. I left early on exam day, forcing her to monitor the students herself. 297 comments. Award. Share. Save. 152 people here. If you're enjoying this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Story 4. $539. Malicious Compliance. Posted by Nathan_Smart. 12 hours ago. Burger King drive-thru speaker is heard by employees throughout the whole kitchen. SOC. Back in the 90s when I worked at BK, they piped in the audio from the drive-thru customers into the kitchen so we could hear their orders. Usually we just went about our day and followed the tickets, but whenever a customer would act out, we would get a little silly with their orders. For instance, one customer asked for extra ketchup on their Whopper a little too hard. By the time I was done, you could see a massive ketchup ring around the burger from the outside of the wrapper. One day a customer was being a little too extra, and asked for everything we have back here as a topping for their Whopper. So, I obliged, literally. I put every single food item we had on this burger. Every condiment. Every veggie. Every meat. I put bacon. A chicken patty. A fish patty. This thing was massive. We never heard any complaint from the customer, so I guess we let them have it their way. 77 comments. Award. Share. Save. 50 people here. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on.